have done, we have semi-automated the procurement, and we have taken the project management and assigned it to the vendor. Which means we have project pre-planning from the beginning to the end. The contractor then is responsible to create a simplified milestone schedule that any stakeholder can understand without any technical knowledge. And the only purpose for this simplified milestone schedule is to create transparency and help the expert mitigate the risk that is actually caused by the stakeholders. And as we've said before, we have identified that 90% of all risk is usually caused by the stakeholders. And so we've developed this approach here that is very simple. And on the procurement side, we identify level of expertise, and based on that level of expertise, what is the risk to that vendor, and how are they going to mitigate the risk, and what value can they add? We quickly interview them, and we use their price. And people say, well, how quick is it? We can take something that used to take 6 months, and we can do it in under a month. Very simplified. Then we take the best value vendor, which normally, and I say normally, has the lowest price and the highest performance, and they walk the client through, and they go through what we call a technical review, answer all questions, identify what they considered risk and why they're doing something and how they're going to mitigate the risk. The contract is awarded. From that point on, the vendor tracks the project. The vendor does the project management. I have actually watched this, and I can tell you, not even being on site, I have watched projects and they've gone spectacularly well. With minimal information, minimal time on the site. Now, what is metrics? Metric is something that's observable and countable. So this came off of a photovoltaic cell or solar panels. And the client wanted to buy solar panels for 2 buildings. So they gave their metrics. We want 2 of these. It's in the San Diego area. We want it done in 2 months. Here's our budget per building, number of people using the building, existing kilowatt hour charge, the reduction in kilowatt hour charge that we're looking for, return on investment, and time and cost deviation in doing this, and customer satisfaction. Is there anything technical here? Nothing. And the contractor will come back and says, I have done your specific type of project 55 times. We normally average out in a month and a half. And these are our metrics that we have on our projects. When the vendor's performance exceeds the client's requirements, we have found an expert. Now, the people who are really threatened by this are some of the technical professionals, because they no longer have a major play. And with this job, it was no different. How can you do this? We're different. We're unique. We have a different kind of organization. We have stricter requirements. It all turns out the same way every time. When somebody thinks they're different, they just don't know enough. They have a lack of information. In the level of expertise, we had a project that said, we want to do a clean room project. Our budget is 45 million, and we have to get it in a couple years. A vendor came back and said, we have a project manager who's not only the best in our company, he's the best in the whole area. And this is his performance metrics. In the last 5 years, he did 7 clean rooms, exactly like this one. Scope, project duration, customer satisfaction, and cost and time deviation on those projects. Do I have to make a decision if this guy is an expert or not? I don't think so. In fact, after I gave this presentation, all the other vendors came up to me and said, who is this vendor and what's this guy's name? We would like to approach him. He is an expert. And you can do this on anything. We did this on an ERP system. Works exactly the same way. The only time someone gets in trouble is when they start forming a what? Relationship. And say, oh, we know those guys. Oh, we trust them. Oh, we will work with them. Oh, no, they can't give you those numbers right now because they'll give it later on. Once again, for the PV installation. And this project ended up spectacularly well. Now, do you think people want to see us publish this? Do you think the, quote, professionals in the industry of construction and engineering like seeing stuff like this? I've actually had a reviewer tell us, we don't believe any of your metrics. You're probably lying. And until you get fully audited, we will not approve any of your work to be, quote, presented in our conference. What we did, we actually kept this and I wrote it up in a paper because we've actually been audited 5 different times. It's amazing. Now, who are experts? Experts are people who can tell the difference. They can tell the difference between what they do and what non-experts do. They can tell the difference between the beginning of an event and the end of an event. They can tell the difference between how this project differs from the previous project they did and what they're going to do differently. Experts can tell the difference. And because they can tell the difference, they also can see into the future. And when they can see into the future, they begin to realize that the stakeholders who they're involved with can't see into the future. They don't have enough information. And so experts realize unless they can make it simple, they're wasting their time. And every time we find an expert, they can tell the difference, see into the future, and they can make it simple. So it minimizes communications. It helps stakeholders to see when they actually don't understand. And it allows the expert now to mitigate risk. Now, I'm kind of running out of time here, so I know which slides to skip here. So if I don't cover a slide, we could go back if somebody has a question on it. Here's the problem we have. In looking at the industry, we now have the experts who are observant. They can see into the future. They think less. For example, if I release this bottle and I run 200 tests of this, what's going to happen every time I release the bottle? It's going to fall. It's the same thing. The expert who understands the law of gravity, do they have to think more or think less? They don't have to think because by observation, they actually know what's going to happen before it happens so they can see into the future. They do not think. They do not make decisions about something that they're expert at. But by observation, the majority of people in our society do not understand. They cannot see into the future. So they have to think more. they have to make more decisions. They try to make rules for everything that they can follow, just like we do in engineering. They need more details. Project to project is inconsistent because they really can't tell the difference. Now, if you're observant or you're an expert and you look at the majority of people who are non-observant, do you think the observant person believes that he can move all the non-observants to get the same results that he's getting? And the answer is no. And therefore, and we're lucky that we have something now that totally changes the game. We're going to use automation. We're going to use a metric-based system. We're, quote, going to minimize decision-making, minimize the need to think. And this system now can actually take non-expert groups and result in them getting very high performance results. What am I saying? I'm saying that by using the automation, and when you think about it, why is automation successful? It's because nobody has to think. Everybody uses it. It just does its job. Now everybody's happy and everybody agrees. The only problem we have here is the majority of professionals and their structure is on which side. That creates an issue. The resistance is very high to do this. This was on a previous project slide. So when we interview them, we ask them, what's the difference? Right? Every question that you see here, it's what's the difference? And we have found out if somebody just uses these questions, doesn't even understand the logic behind it, they will quickly identify who the expert is and who the non-experts are. It's an amazing technology. This is important. The expert vendors are responsible for less than 1% of the risk. And basically what happens, they have to pre-plan in detail, then they have to simplify to mitigate risk. And it goes by milestones. Anytime they lack information, the expert gives their estimate. Anytime there are other stakeholders who they can't control, but they know these stakeholders will cause the risk, they have a risk mitigation plan. And this is all it is. Very simple. So what happens is from the very beginning to the very end, before anything happens, all we want to know is what do the metrics look like? And we have a weekly risk report on every project that we run. It tracks the deviation. It captures the overall that anybody who's not technical, they're just a major stakeholder, they can understand. This is where we are, cost, time. If we have a deviation, who caused it? On every project, we have a schedule and the actual schedule. If there's a difference between the two, we explain the deviation. Amazing. It's so simplistic. And you can't read all that, I'm sorry, we don't have time. And then every week, the vendor now says, I'm worried about this risk. We're not there yet, but I don't see it happening. And I highly encourage you to get on this. So when the risk occurs, it's not a surprise. And there's never a discussion of whose fault it was. The major emphasis is on risk mitigation. And we had some unbelievable projects, went into the Netherlands. This was the only way they could do it. Some of the guys called us back and said, can you help us? The results were unbelievable. They were so staggering. It helped the vendors deliver on time. Everybody's time and cost was cut. That this became, back in 2012, This became the most popular form of procurement in the Netherlands. And what has happened? It's moved to Norway, Poland. We're now in Belgium, which for the first time, I can't believe it myself. Deloitte has learned our system, come to Arizona State University, been licensed in the system, and they're going to try to run this thing now in Belgium. There are some issues, but just having them have the motivation to try to do this is unbelievable. Now you have to remember, we have been operating out of Arizona State University, then now we moved to Schema, but our effort as researchers is to actually run tests and assist organizations to run this. So the U.S. Army Medical Command, you can see total awarded costs, almost $1 billion at this time, over 5 or 6 years. You can see the contractor generated risk. It's at 0%. And we could track any contractor doing this. In Minnesota, for 6 years, we tracked different users running this. Now, I have to be honest here, because we're into research, when we first ran it to where we ran it the last time, it's turned from like a Volkswagen into like a Maserati. I mean, we are like so good at this now. But look again, the key numbers, right? Go to the contractor generated risk. And everybody agrees with this. It's unbelievable. So what are we doing now? We have, quote, continually trying to perfect the project management and the risk management model. We are now moving the models into the education and research area in China. This Saturday, one of my students is giving the first presentation in a long time, and they're really interested in this. We also have these research tests going on. We have the first major general contractor who's actually running this by themselves and sending us their information, and we're tracking their performance. It's the first time that a major general contractor in the area of construction has figured this out, trained their people, they know how to run this thing, and they're feeding us all their information. And we're now at the Schema Business School, no longer at Arizona State University, unless for licensing purposes. Everything else, we're now going and addressing it through the Schema Business School in the project management program. And you can see all the different research efforts that are going on. If anybody wants to work with us, hopefully they can join CIB, and hopefully they can appreciate what's going on in all these areas. It is the cutting edge in the construction industry, including the latest student is trying to identify how artificial intelligence technology can be used. Not, quote, in the technical areas, because that's done by technical people, but in the project management functions, in the delivery of the service. We have an annual conference, and it's going the best we've ever done. I think we're over 60 people now for something in January. It's unbelievable. And I hate to say it, it's not free. It's a charged conference, but I think it's going to be the best we've ever done. And we're looking for research partners. We want to work through the CIB. If anybody's interested in understanding how can you minimize contractor deviations to under 1%? How can we save 5 to 30% or 50% like we did in our last test for an owner? How to understand performance information. And all of, quote, our past research. information. So that's all I have. I did take a few minutes over, but Mike, if I can turn it back to you now.
If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit the thumbs up button and subscribe to our channel for more content. If you have any questions about the best value approach or for Dr. Dean, leave them in the comment section below and we'll get to them in a later video. Thanks, and we'll see you next time.